Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Chris Cebollero.
Well, once again, it's time for the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. I want to thank you for joining us once again. Last week's show, I was really impressed. We were kind of talking about lean and Kaizen and really kind of how we can utilize that in our daily, leadership skills. And Mac's story gave us a really great opportunity of understanding when it comes to lean. And we're going to have Mac back and we're going to kind of break that down. But I'm really excited for today's show because we have the co-founder, the partner of Mac's story, Ria Story, who's going to join us. And she is the author of Leadership Gems for Women, 30 Characteristics of Very Successful Women. And before we kind of bring her in here and hear her expertise, one of the things that I really want to kind of focus on today is the female in the workplace, the female professionals, our peers, and how we work with them and how we overcome the gender bias that we see in organizations. And I think Ria is really going to give us a great opportunity to understand what we can do and what you can do from a female perspective of being successful in the workplace. And we know that it's difficult. And I'm really excited for this week's show. So, Ria, I want to thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here, Chris. Thank you so much.
And I got to tell you, I read your book, Leadership Gems for Women, 30 Characteristics of Very Successful Women. I was very impressed. I enjoyed it, and I recommend it thoroughly to anybody who's interested in it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. One of the reasons I'm passionate about this book and really this topic is because for a long time I had the impression that I wasn't a leader. I wasn't a natural leader, or I wasn't necessarily gifted in leadership. And when I realized that leadership can be defined as influence, and absolutely every one of us are influencing the people around us, it's simply a question of how can we influence them positively and how can we get more influence. And when I realized that, it was like a light bulb that said, hey, I am a leader after all. So I'm passionate about that.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I think you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to the definition of leadership. We often think about leadership as a noun, as a position, but it's not. It really is a verb, and it makes no difference of where your position is in the organization. You have the opportunity to influence someone every day, and that's one of the things that we should really try to do.
Absolutely. And, to me, these principles are important because they apply absolutely in the workplace, whether it's leading the people who are on your team and report to you or leading your boss or your coworkers, but also the same principles apply at home. So when we talk about influencing our children, our spouse, or those loved ones at home, I think that's just as important.
Well, it's really great that you came to the foundation of saying, you know what, I'm a leader and I'm going to make a difference. But so I guess the first question I have for you, Ria, is I really enjoyed the book as we talked about. What was the catalyst for writing Leadership Gems for Women, 30 Characteristics of Very Successful Women?
That's a great question, Chris. The catalyst for me really was writing a book that contained the concepts and the principles of leadership that I wish I had known when I started out my career. So, of course, there's certainly more than 30 characteristics, absolutely, but nobody's going to read an encyclopedia, so I had to just limit and choose a few. So I really wanted to choose some leadership and success principles that, I wish I had known early in my career. It would have made a huge difference in how fast I transitioned up in my career.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important. And we think about the work that we do as leaders, as speakers, as coaches. We're really sharing our wisdom. We're really sharing our knowledge and experiences for the people who want to achieve the things that we maybe had to fight for in our career. So I think before we talk about the crux of your book, could you share maybe some of the challenges that you experienced in the workforce that as you were trying to climb that corporate ladder?
Oh, sure. My biggest obstacle really was myself. I'm not a natural communicator. Some people who meet me today may not understand when I say I'm not a natural communicator. I was really very challenged in that. I grew up in an abusive situation as a teenager, and so I was very isolated. I was homeschooled. We weren't very socialized. And so when I started my career, I didn't have just natural ability to have a conversation with someone. And that really limited me certainly in any job situation. And as I grew in my career, just those basic communication and connection skills that are so important for influence were one of my biggest obstacles. So I really have worked on that to improve. once I figured out my biggest obstacle was myself, I could overcome that by intentionally developing those skills. Things got much better for me.
And I got to tell you, I mean, what a great little story, because now you look at where you are in your career, you have a successful business, you've got a great brand, and you're a sought after speaker, around the United States for your message. And I got to just give you kudos in the sense that, a lot of times people who have the adversity, the hurdles, the challenges in their life, they don't step outside their comfort zone to develop into that successful leader. So I just want to be able to say, kudos to you. But secondarily, how encouraging is that to the people who are listening who may think that there's no opportunity to get out from the past?
Well, thank you, Chris. I tell people, I'm like, if I could learn to do it, anyone can. I'm a great example of someone who just, didn't have that natural gift, but yet has been able to learn to do it. And if I can do it, anyone can.
So when we think about the book, and I really like starting with this when I chat with authors, what's the biggest takeaways that people are going to get from reading your book? Now, as someone who's enjoyed it, I do want to say that even though you're focusing on the 30 characteristics of very successful women, one of the things that I got out of it, as a leader, was that the things that I can help and that I can work with within my organizations as well to understand some of these challenges. So, from the aspect of what is the big takeaways from reading, what do you give the listeners?
For me, the biggest takeaway from reading is, and I'll share this quote with you, Warren Bennis said, "The most dangerous leadership myth is that leaders are born, that there is a genetic factor to leadership." So I really wanted the biggest takeaway for this book and to the reader to understand that leadership is something, we all have a little bit of influence, but leadership is something we can all improve in. We can all get better at it. And these are just tried and true principles. They're not my principles. The characteristics that I've included in the book are mine. But, the principles themselves have been around, for ages. They're just principles that are tried and true because they work. They work in every situation. If we do them, it's just a natural progression that if we do these things and we do them well, our influence and our leadership will increase. So, it is a myth. A lot of times we think, or maybe I'm not the boss or the CEO, so I don't need leadership. Maybe I don't need to read a leadership book. But in truth, every single one of us wants more influence. You think of any time in your life where you are mad or sad or upset or frustrated. Is it because we have too much influence or not enough? And every single time we think of those situations, it's because we don't have enough influence. The problem is that none of us think, gosh, I'm not happy with this situation, let me go read a leadership book. But in truth, if we start to work on ourselves and improve our leadership ability, the situation around us will improve as well.
And I think that that was very well said. And I think there's just so much in that answer. And, one of the things that I also want to touch on is who you are when you get into the workplace. How important is being authentic and that authenticity as you enter the workplace and as you try to, set yourself out as a professional? And I think that one of the things that I run into as I coach females who are in the workplace is that they're trying to act or they're trying to be someone else. And I think being authentic is so important. In your book, you discuss that. How important is authenticity when it comes to representing yourself in the workplace?
Oh, I think it's absolutely critical because being authentic, while it's often incorrectly perceived as a weakness, authenticity requires us to be vulnerable. It requires us to say, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I don't know the answer. But when we're able to be vulnerable, we build trust with those around us because at the end of the day, everyone knows we're not perfect. They want to know, do we know that we're not perfect? And are we comfortable admitting that? Because we're all human. We all make mistakes. When we're able to be authentic and acknowledge those strengths, our influence is increased because it's not, we don't become better leaders by pretending that we're perfect or that we don't have flaws. We become better leaders and influencers when we're able to overcome those. And the first step is being authentic and acknowledging it.
Right. If you can't recognize it, you don't know what you need to fix. So I think that that's very well said. Another big factor, I think, and this is really regardless of gender, one of the other things that I think is challenging is folks that are not very positive. And, you know, when you think about success, it really goes to your attitude of being positive. I mean, so what are some of the tips that we could utilize to have that positive attitude to put ourselves in that right direction?
That's a good question. I love the quote. John Maxwell said, 85% of our success in life is due to our attitude. Zig Ziglar even said, positive thinking will let you do everything better than negative thinking. So, you know, when we're positive when things are going right, that doesn't really increase our influence because everyone expects that. It's when things are going wrong and we're positive that we find our increase in influence. So I talk about three main ways that we can really choose intentionally to be more positive, and in being more positive in these three areas, we'll find overall our attitude will be more positive naturally. So the first thing I talk about is thoughts. You know, every single morning when you wake up, you have that opportunity before you get out of bed and you jump into your day and start getting ready for work and busy and rushed. Stop and ask yourself right there, what opportunities are going to come this day? You know, you can look for the bad or you can look for the good in things. So when you start to think positively about opportunities rather than negatively about things you're not looking forward to, you'll spend all of your time and energy focusing on the negatives. And whatever you focus on is going to expand, it's going to grow. So when you start thinking positive about your thoughts, you'll find, you've heard the old computer saying, right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's much the same way. You know, when we're intentionally thinking good thoughts and choosing good thoughts, we'll find ourselves in a more positive frame of reference. The second thing is words. And I think it's so important to just eliminate negative phrases from our vocabulary. So often we say, well, I can't do that, or I have to do that, or I don't want to do that, but I've got to anyway. And so if we get rid of that and we turn just those words around and say, instead of thinking of I can't do something or I can't overcome this situation, start thinking, how can I? Because that opens us up to different style of thinking, more creative, certainly. And then actions. You know, if you want more positivity in your life, read positive books, watch positive movies, volunteer to help someone. You know, think about the actions in your life that can help set you up for just a better attitude. And sometimes it's the little things that come down to big things.
Yeah, I think you said that really, really well. When you talk about being positive, you know as well as I do, is we share the same friend and mentor in John Maxwell. And one of the things that, we talk, that John teaches us is the fact of, as we say those negative thoughts get imprinted on our subconscious mind, and then we start to act on those negative thoughts, and they become negative behaviors or negative habits. And just as you said, if we're able to keep those thoughts pure and positive, we're going to get some positive habits and positive results. So I really like how you said that. One of the things that I think is really important that I enjoyed from your book as well was the talk of confidence. And when we talk about confidence in the workplace, especially, for a woman's success, one of the challenges really comes down to kind of their male counterparts. And, my friend told me a story the other day that, they were in a meeting and there were some really great ideas that were coming from one of his peers who happened to be female, and none of the individuals in the room were listening and really kind of taking that experience, Ria. And I think that one of the things that gave him some pause was, and he talked to me, is that he didn't speak up on her behalf. And I thought that was really interesting now. But when we talk about confidence in yourself and being able to sit at that table, how important is confidence, and what tips do you have for the female professionals out there to really exude that confidence?
So I think of confidence as having two basic types of confidence. There is self-confidence, and that's confidence in our convictions, in our core values, our beliefs. It's confidence in who we are as a person. So it's confidence in what we will stand up for. It's confidence in the things that are important to us, our priorities. These beliefs are enhanced by just the lessons and experiences that we've had in life, both good and bad. The lessons we've learned from, as well as the successes we've had. So our self-confidence is very static. Who you are and your confidence in your values as a person doesn't change, regardless of your environment. Situational confidence is certainty in the skills and then tasks and abilities that you have, the knowledge that you have. So it's really competency based, and that does change. So for example, when you start a new job and a new role in a new organization, you don't have that situational confidence like you will when you've been there for a couple of years, because there's still so much to learn and so many unknowns. You still can have self-confidence in your ability to, in your character side of things, your ability to learn, your willingness to learn, your integrity, your discipline. These are all the character traits that really make up the majority of our success in life. That's our self-confidence versus situational confidence. So my advice to the females or women in the workforce particularly is, we certainly need to balance out the character and the competency side of things. We absolutely need to have time and dedicated energy in improving our skills and abilities and knowledge, but don't forget to improve and intentionally develop the character side of things, because that will help you in your self-confidence and your confidence in yourself, and that's static. That doesn't change. So, be intentional, have a personal growth plan, whether it's reading a book a month or reading a book a week, or, listening to some motivational or leadership podcasts, anything like that. Not that was a completely plug for your show.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But one of the things now that you talk about is, we really don't do that enough, though. I mean, we work hard, we try to put ourselves in a position to be successful, but we're not putting time, or we're not investing time in our own professional development to grow. So I'm really glad that you kind of mentioned read the books and listen to the podcast. And that's one of the reasons we do the things that we do, is to share that wisdom and to help people grow. And I like how you kind of put that cherry on the cake to say, this is something that's really, really important for your professional development. And I think we forget that all the time, that if we're not investing in ourselves, we're not growing.
Absolutely. And you know what? If you're not willing to invest in yourself, no one else will be either.
And I think that is very, very true. So, I guess, now as we think about the workplace, there seems to be a lot of gender bias. So, if, from, my friend's side, I had to give advice to say, next time I think you want to be able to look into, these types of responses that may be able to, assist when your peer is not being listened to. But if we think about gender bias in the workplace from a male side, what is it that I can do to help minimize that gender bias that really kind of puts our female professionals, our female peer professionals, on the same level that they're not being kind of looked down upon?
I think that women feel a lot of pressure in the workplace to be that leader that has it all, or that person that has all the answers or has all the solutions. I think there's a lot of pressure on particularly female leaders to have that impression of someone who has it all together and not making mistakes. So I think from the male perspective, something that really helps relieve some of that pressure is, number one, being authentic yourself and setting that example of saying, hey, I'm not perfect and I do make mistakes, take ownership for that, but work to correct it. So I think, number one, if you as a male can be more authentic, that certainly opens the culture up for women to do the same. And number two, I think it comes down to who we are as people and valuing the strengths and the differences, whether that's a male or female coworker. But really, when we learn to value the differences and the strengths of our team, regardless of their gender, that really, again, opens up that place in our organization where we can have a stronger team, because we value the differences and we can build on the strengths of the team. So it comes down to recognizing, hey, I'm not good at everything, but these are the 1, 2, 3 things that I'm good at. Let me balance those weak areas out with someone who is good at that.
It's amazing that we have to really kind of talk about gender bias in the workplace today. But I think that one of the things that I got out of that answer was we need to stop looking at people as gender, as race, as religions, and we really need to start looking at people as being members of the team. And like I said, it's a shame that we have to go ahead and talk about gender bias in the workplace today. And you think in the year 2017 we should be able to be worrying about employee engagement, and we should be worrying about communication skills, but instead we still have to worry about females not being paid the same amount of money and getting the same opportunities. workplace. And it's just really kind of crazy that we have to still have this discussion.
It is, it's something that I think as leaders and as we grow as leaders, our discernment for those types of issues becomes more aware. We have more awareness of that and less tolerance for it. We really should just treat people like they are, as people, regardless of, again, their race, their gender, their age. If we start valuing them for the strengths and what they bring to the team, it really, the other stuff falls away.
Well, I don't know about age. We got to get them 10-year-olds out of the workforce. I mean, them 10-year-olds. But, I think one of the things that's really important is, as well, because you touched on it as leaders, and I have to agree with you on that topic, because what we permit as leaders is what we promote. And if I'm the top leader in the organization and I'm allowing that type of behavior to continue in my meetings, if I'm not respecting the people who are sitting around the table and putting a stop to those types of things, it's just going to continue. And I like kind of how you said that as leaders, we really have to kind of make that difference, because we've got to be the ones to step up. It's a sour culture. It's a cancerous culture when the leader is allowing gender bias, when leader is allowing people to be bullied inside their own organizations, and we've got to do something to change that.
And just from the individual perspective, if someone is experiencing a bias, again, it kind of comes back to, rather than blaming someone else for something I can't control, focus on the things that I can control. I may be experiencing that bias in the workplace. Let me work to see what I can do on myself to overcome that. Because that we'll always have situations where we can't fix everything or everyone. But when we bring that focus on improving ourselves, we'll find that the situation changes. Viktor Frankl said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
I got to tell you, this has been really good stuff. So, Ria, if folks want to get in touch with you, if they want to engage with you, if they want to buy the book, what's the best way they can do that?
The book is available on Amazon or Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. You can visit my website. It's riastory.com, so RIASTORY.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Ria Story. Just search me up. Glad to hear from anyone and share some leadership principles.
And I got to tell you, I think you gave us some really great tips, some really great opportunities. And I think that if we're able to follow these, we're able to make sure that there's some balance in an organization. There's some balance in the workplace. And I think those are the things that we need to do. So, Ria Story, I want to thank you for joining us. And I got to tell you, I think that there's so many directions that we can go in as we talk about this topic. Promise me you'll come back so we can chat again.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
And for everybody out there, I mean, this was really an important topic. I think a lot of things that Ria shared with us, even though we kind of focused on, our female professionals in the workplace, a lot of the things that she talked about really could be utilized regardless of gender. When we talk about a positive attitude, when we talk about confidence, when we talk about those characteristics that really we all need to have. As I mentioned earlier, it's kind of crazy that we still have to talk about gender bias in the workplace. But still, when we talk about being professional, when we talk about being successful, they're all the same characteristic. So with that said, I'm really excited to have this conversation today, kind of make a difference when it comes to this. And until next week, I look forward to chatting with you again real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of ChrisSubbolero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.